Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live here in Nashville, Tennessee. Today's Sunday, September 1st. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. What an exciting week one we had. Still not over. We got LSU USC tonight and FSU Boston College on Monday. But we're here to talk about the impact this first week had on recruiting and what a week it was. Really, it's been a crazy month. Let's take a look at some of the big names that have come off the board in the month of August. And there you have it. Some really big names off the board. That Trey McNutt, I can't believe that was in August. That feels like it was months ago. Remember him and Khalil Lockett. They both made their decisions in the first week of August. Feels like 2 months ago now. But you see here, Texas, the Longhorns really cleaned up, and we're going to take a look at the top 20 graphics in a minute, but it's going to be reflected. For the Longhorns to enter the month of August with 0 5-stars and to end the month with 3 is simply incredible. Khalil Lockett got it popping early on August 7th. Jonah Williams made his decision a couple weeks later, and then on Friday morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, wide receiver Jamie French out of Jacksonville, Florida, made his announcement, kicking off what was a great recruiting weekend for the Longhorns. We're going to cover that in this episode. But then you also see a couple other big decisions that kind of shaped this class. Running back A.K. Deere. He finally commits to Alabama after decommitting from Ole Miss earlier this summer. Edge Jared Smith, that was another big commitment right here on the On3 Recruits channel. He goes to Auburn. We've talked so much about Auburn in the month of August, but Jared Smith was really the one that got the ball rolling. He's a borderline 5-star prospect. Really, Auburn had an excellent month of August, and we're going to talk some Auburn recruiting coming up. All right. Before we get going, I'm going to tell you to hit subscribe, but I'm also going to tell you how you can get On3 for just $1 using promo code BERG1. That's right. We're always going to keep this On3 Recruits YouTube channel free. Always going to be free. But if you're thinking about joining On3, now's the time to do it because I can get you there for just $1. You can read all Steve Wiltfong, all Chad Simmons intel, all of the NIL info from Pete Nakos for just $1 right now using promo code BERG1. All right, let's get going. I want us to look at the current top 10 rankings here. Ohio State, they had Phillip Bell over the weekend, a big-time wide receiver out of California. They stay at number 1. Ohio State is cooking. Alabama 2, LSU, Georgia, and then Auburn at 5. Texas has made a huge run heading into the month of August. They were sitting outside the top 15. I think they were at 16 or 17. Now they're knocking on the door of a top 5, not just top 5, because if they land 5-star Michael Terry, we're going to talk about it, but they could be a top 3 recruiting program. Tennessee made a big move this summer. Oregon was at number 3 at one point. Then you got Texas A&M and Oklahoma rounding out that top 10. At 11, you got Florida State. Notre Dame fell. They entered the summer at number 3. They're currently 12. Miami, they're lurking. Boy, are they lurking at 13, looking for that top 10. Clemson, Michigan, it round out the top 15. And then you got USC, Penn State, Missouri, the Florida Gators at 19, and Georgia Tech at 20. All right, we talked a lot on this channel about the recruiting impact of this week 1 matchup between the Florida Gators and the Miami Hurricanes. We talked all summer about whoever won this game was going to come out with some serious momentum on the trail. We said, would it be UF? Year 3 under Billy Napier, 2 disappointing seasons so far, but the hype was high heading into week 1. Or would it be Miami? 3 years of Mario Cristobal, 2 kind of underperforming seasons when he got started, but the hype heading into the season has been at an all-time high. Now, the games got played, and yesterday, only one of those teams lived up to the hype. That was the Miami Hurricanes. They dismantled the UF football team in front of their fans, but more importantly, in front of their recruits. You saw Justin Scott walking over to DJ Pickett after the game. I mean, Miami, they really kicked their feet up in the swamp, making it their own home. They kind of turned a big recruiting weekend for the Gators into a big recruiting weekend for the Canes. And in this video, I'm going to give you 5 big-name recruits that Miami made up ground with because of their blowout win over UF. Here it is. Let's start with DJ Pickett, the 5-star corner. Hey, he could be a 5-star wide receiver. Plays a heck of a position on the high school level, but we project him to be a 5-star corner. And DJ Pickett, I mean, what more can you say? If you're a Miami Hurricane fan, you did everything that you need DJ Pickett to see. He's committed to LSU, but he's from Zephyr Hills, Florida. He has family at Miami, currently playing there. DJ Pickett was very familiar with Coral Gable campus throughout the summer, throughout the spring. He made several visits, and he was in the swamp to witness what Miami did to Florida. Now watch his recruitment to Miami continue to pick up. I don't think this is a situation where we're going to see him flip anytime soon. I think that Miami's going to need to get him back on campus for a home game before anything. We talk any flip watch or anything like that. LSU in a really good spot. DJ Pickett's father said to Steve Wiltfong of On3 prior to this weekend that DJ Pickett is 1,000% committed to LSU. That's what you want to hear if you're an LSU fan. But coming out of this weekend, Miami's got to feel good about the long-term prospects of potentially flipping a guy like DJ Pickett. All right, next up on this list is wide receiver Joshua Moore. He's from Pembroke Pines down in South Florida, so you know this was a heated recruitment. All three of the in-state teams, FSU, UF, and Miami, were all heavily involved in this one. And Joshua Moore famously told On3 just a couple weeks ago that, hey, I haven't signed anything. He said he's committed to Florida, but he hasn't signed anything, and he's right. There's still a couple more months until that happens, and until then, Joshua Moore is going to be up for grabs. Yes, UF has his commitment. That's a good spot to be in. You'd rather have him committed than trying to flip him, but watch out for Miami now. Joshua Moore was watching this game. The Miami Hurricanes were a finalist for him, and I think the Canes will double back and try to flip Joshua Moore. But so will Florida State, and Florida's going to try to hold on to him. So the battle still rages on there. Wide receiver Dallas Wilson. He was supposed to be at the game, but we got final word that Dallas Wilson did not show. He's committed to Oregon and has been for almost a year and a half now, but Dallas Wilson's from Tampa, Florida. He's very familiar with both of these programs. He's a big-bodied wide receiver that either team would love to flip, and there's not a lot of wide receivers built like a Dallas Wilson physically. So committed to Oregon and has been solid for well over a year, but he's a name that Miami fans need to keep an eye on. Also, cornerback Ben Hanks, he just recently committed to UF. He's another one of these South Florida prospects. And yeah, he's a legacy prospect. So is Vernell Brown III. But when it comes to flip targets that are legacy prospects, I think Vernell Brown III, he's going to go to UF no matter what. But I would just keep an eye. I'm not putting him on flip watch. But I think this game had a big impact on Ben Hanks. He had a tough decision when he chose Florida over Miami. And I think that this is another one that could come back around. I would circle Ben Hanks, UF commit, as one of the guys that Miami made up some serious ground with. All right, one more, and he's a bonus because he's in the 2026 class. But this is where you take the lead for an elite prospect like this. Wide receiver Calvin Russell was watching this game. He's a top 20 player for next year's class in 2026, the number 2 ranked wide receiver in America. He attends Miami Northwestern High School. And, of course, this is a big 3 battle between UF, FSU, and Miami. But get this, Russell he's another one that isn't just your average wide receiver. He goes 6'5.5" and 190 pounds, and he just started his junior year of high school. So Calvin Russell is another one of these guys that I think this was a big win, and it'll go a long way to help Miami in his recruitment. So you guys talked to me. I mean, you saw the photos. The Miami players went over to the recruit section to go greet the UF recruits. I mean, you don't see this in a road game. Miami making it almost like a home game. These recruits were watching, so let me know. Talk to me. Comment section below. How are we feeling after this win, and what recruits do you want to see Miami capitalize on with this big Week 1 win over UF? Let me know. Comment section below. All right. We have a monster show today. We're going to talk a little Texas. We're going to talk some Georgia. We got to talk Auburn, and we got to talk Ole Miss. Let's get to it. Let's talk some Auburn recruiting. Hugh Freeze, he's out here just taking who he wants. We're going to cover it all. I got Jeffrey Lee from Auburn Live here. He's going to take us behind the scenes of all the action that went on out in the Plains this weekend. Week 1, on the field at least, was a breeze for Auburn, winning big. Speaking of winning big, let's talk right now Prize Picks. I loved last season, but I got to admit I'm a little rusty. I didn't have the best Week 1, right? 2 mistakes I'm going to share with you right now. I picked more than on Connor Wegman and Riley Leonard passing yards. I knew by about the second drive that neither of those were going to hit. I took a big L there. Then I took Isaiah Bond for more than 71 yards receiving and I took Cam Ward for more than 0.5 INT. I got my little demon emoji going for that one. Cam Ward did throw 1 INT, had an excellent game. I hit on the more than. Isaiah Bond, 71 yards receiving. He had like 65, so I lost that one too. It's real simple to play, though. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. This is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, makes Prize Pick the #1 daily fantasy sports app. This week on Prize Picks, I'm going to take, no, you know what? I need you guys to help me out. For just this week, too, I need your picks. Send me some. I need some winners. Comment section below. Remember, Prize Picks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Prize Picks is the most fun way to make a little bit of money during the football season. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/inside scoop. Use the promo code inside scoop to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in a lineup. Go to prizepicks.com/inside scoop. Use promo code inside scoop. Remember, Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's bring on Jeffrey Lee. We got to talk about what was going on in the Plains. It was just for the first game, there's going to be much bigger visitor list than this one. But let's talk about 5-star corner Naeem Offord. He was there. He's the Ohio State commit that, he showed up on the Plains a couple times this summer. We didn't make a huge deal about it, but what do you make of him attending for game 1?
I think it says a lot, Josh. I think his actions say a lot. After he committed to Ohio State back in February, it was almost he was kind of a ghost around Auburn. He didn't show up, I think, until May. Then he came back again for Big Cat, and then here we are, the first game back. Yeah. And back in the season, and he's back on campus, and he's got his girlfriend and some friends with him, and he's spending time with Hugh Freeze. He's spending time with Wesley McGriff, and stayed the entire game, and then left, basically saying, I'm listening. Auburn's talking, and I'm listening.
All right. Well, I'm listening too. We're going to see what happens when Naeem Offord. He keeps showing up. We're just going to keep making a note of it. Running back Ousmane Kroma. This one was interesting because all week we talked about him potentially going to the Georgia game. We thought that that's where he was going to be, in Atlanta to watch Georgia Clemson. Nope, he wasn't there. He was at Auburn this weekend, and then on, I think it was Sunday morning, that's when the picks rolled in. Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons, we got the double analyst RPM pick for Ousmane Kroma to Auburn. How you feeling there?
Feeling very good. Feeling very understandable about why Chad and Steve put in their picks. We talked to him Saturday night after the game, and I tell you, he was one of the more enthused of the recruits that we talked to after the game. He was very impressed with Auburn. He was very impressed with what he saw, the attitude, the game plan, the crowd. I think the last time he was at Auburn for a game was during the Harston era, and he said, man, it was just a completely different vibe. And, he could tell it. He got to spend time with Freeze. He got to spend time with Derek Nix. Alvin Henderson, Auburn's current running back commitment, was there with him, recruiting him. So, and I thought one of the more interesting quotes from the night was it's Auburn, Florida State, and Georgia, which is no surprise to anybody that's been following his recruitment. However, he does have a leader. He didn't want to disclose who that leader was, but I think everybody that's been following his recruitment closely, at least behind the scenes, kind of feels like Auburn might be getting over that hump. Everybody thought it was Florida State at one time. Everybody thought it was Georgia at one time. Yeah. Everybody thought it again. It was Florida State. But here comes Auburn, and look out for Auburn. He's going to take a visit next weekend to Georgia. Got to get over that hump if you're Auburn. Got to get through that next weekend if you're, in fact, the team on top. Yeah. But after that, he's going to take a kind of a novelty visit to South Carolina, because he said South Carolina's not really in it for him, but he's going to visit South Carolina in the middle of September. And then he's going to have a decision after that, Josh. And I agree with Steve, and I agree with Chad Simmons that as of today, I think Auburn is the team to beat.
All right, that's pretty interesting. Now, when it comes to linebacker Elijah Melendez, he did something rare over the weekend. He's been committed to Miami for months. 2 hours before kickoff, week 1, he announces his decommitment from Miami, and he pops up on Auburn's campus. It sure feels good if you are an Auburn fan. If you want to see what happens with the linebacker Elijah Melendez, I think you just follow the visits here. I mean, he decommits from Miami the day of their first game. I mean, Miami went out and looked great, by the way.
Right.
Still, he's done with the Miami Hurricanes. Does Auburn is Auburn the team to beat now? I know Ole Miss wants to get involved. I know UF recruited him for a little bit, probably Florida State also, but it seems like Auburn right now is the team to beat.
Auburn without question. And you go back to middle of the summer, Josh, he was committed to Miami. He visited Auburn and for an official visit, and he left there with Auburn on top, believe it or not. Now, that was behind the scenes. He was still committed to Miami. His plan after he left his official visit was to come back to Auburn for Big Cat Weekend, to commit to Auburn, to flip his commitment from Miami to Auburn. So I was feeling very good about Auburn's chances. And then he takes an official visit to Miami, and it was over. It was, I'm locked in 1,000%, go Canes, I'm home, blah, blah, blah. It was done. We didn't hear much from Elijah after that when it pertains to Auburn. Then last week, early in the week, we started to hear some buzz that maybe Elijah Melendez wasn't completely out of it yet, and maybe we might see him on campus soon. Well, Thursday rolls around, and we find out that he is, in fact, planning to be at Auburn this weekend. Josh, he wasn't on campus, I think, 2 hours. He was on campus for 2 hours, decommits from Miami, and then stays the night in Auburn, leaves Sunday to go home. I think he's going to have a decision sooner than later. I think it's going to happen maybe, but not immediately. I think he's going to take another week or two before he actually commits. But I do think Auburn is absolutely in the driver's seat, absolutely the team to beat, and it's going to be hard to change that before he announces a commitment.
All right, speaking of being in the driver's seat, speaking of being the team to beat, Deuce Knight, quarterback out of Mississippi, he's committed to Notre Dame, but on Friday night he was sporting that Auburn towel throughout his game. Then he shows up on the Plains on Saturday. We talked plenty about Deuce Knight last week. Everything, did it check all the boxes? Is the plan still the plan? We said it last week on a video. You kind of laid out the timeline for us. You think Deuce Knight commits to Auburn about a week from now?
I do. I think everything so far, Josh, I haven't heard anything to deviate from that plan. I think he's leaving Auburn on Sunday. I think he knows where he's going. I think if he hasn't already, he hasn't informed Auburn of his plans. I think now only it's a matter of when. So when does he want to announce? Well, Friday night's the big rivalry game for George County and Deuce Knight. I don't think he wants to. I said this last week on your show. I don't think he wants to take away from that. It's a big game for him. It means a lot to him and his teammates. He doesn't want to take away from that. So I think this week he's going to go in business as usual when it comes to playing football. And then maybe Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to be on very high alert for Deuce Knight to flip to Auburn.
Okay. All right. Now, we got to wrap it up with a prospect that was not there, but he's still at the top of Auburn's board. That's Andrew Babalola. This is another one we really don't have a timeline on. Steve keeps saying his season starts September 6th, and he'd like to have a decision by then, but we've also heard the August 28th date, the August 18th. I mean, we've heard so many dates with Andrew Babalola. I guess the better question is, do you think Auburn lands him whenever he makes his commitment?
Whew, man, you know what? I default to Michigan. And here's, right now, I'm almost Missouri when it comes to Andrew Babalola and Auburn. Mm-hmm. But, man, Auburn sure does feel good about him. I just think everything lines up. And I've talked to several people and around his recruitment, and I'm talking at different schools and everywhere else. Michigan is the common denominator, Josh. Oklahoma thinks it's them and Michigan. Stanford thinks it's them and Michigan. Mm-hmm. Auburn thinks it's them and Michigan. Michigan thinks it's them and Auburn. The common denominator there is Michigan. He loves academics. He loves football. Those two things are going to be the most important things in determining where he goes. Well, Michigan's got one of the top, if not the top, public institutions in the country, and they're coming off a national title. However, I think things in the past week or two, excuse me, has started to tilt things a little bit more towards Auburn. I'm not there, Josh. I'm not there. I'm not ready to say Auburn's the team to beat. Yet. I'm not doing that. I think Michigan's going to be the team to beat until they're not. But I'm like Steve that season starts coming up Friday. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen this week. If it's going to happen soon, it's going to happen this week, and we all think it's going to happen soon. So yeah. I do feel like it's Auburn, Michigan. I do feel comfortable in that. I've got it at 50-50, Josh, and I'm not ready to lean one way or the other just yet.
All right, Auburn fans, let us know. I said at the top, Hugh Freeze is taking what he wants. Is Andrew Babalola next, the five-star offensive tackle? Let us know. Comment section below. Big weekend for Auburn. Big weekend at Auburn Live. Jeffrey Lee, thanks for stopping by today on the Inside Scoop.
Absolutely, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Texas Longhorns roll 52-0 in week one. Ryan Wingo makes his debut. Arch Manning throws his first touchdown. It was a great weekend for Texas, and it really got started on Friday. That's when five-star wide receiver Jamie French committed to the Longhorns, and he did it early, a 7:30 a.m. commitment. I love it. We had all day to talk about it. That's not the only reason I love it, but we did talk about it, and we're gonna rehash it here. I got Justin Wells from Inside Texas. We're also going to talk about this weekend's visits. But first, Texas fans, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel. We love talking Texas recruiting, and we're going to do it all season long, so jump on board right now and hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Justin Wells. Now, let's go back to Friday. I know it seems like a while ago, but Friday, Jamie French out of Jacksonville Mandarin High School pledged to the Texas Longhorns. It was a huge commitment. This one, at certain times, I mean, at one point he was committed to Alabama. At another point, we thought it might be Ohio State. LSU was in good shape. But in the end, it's Texas. What does this mean for not only Texas recruiting, but more so that offense that the Longhorns are going to be putting on the field next year?
You know, anytime you can get 2 5-star receivers in the same cycle, Josh, that's a really big deal. Like, you know, you look back, that's not a common occurrence. Generally, it's difficult to kind of stack those kids. What they're seeing is what you just saw on Saturday. Texas threw the ball to 10 different receivers in a win over Colorado State. That's the kind of impact Jamie French is going to have. You know, when he's joining Khalil Lockett, and honestly, those two guys could not be more complementary in what their style of play and how they really just help each other out. And I think the idea of catching footballs from Arch Manning and KJ Lacey is also appealing. But honestly, this room just gets stronger. You know, Texas was kind of in a rut last month in July. And fans, we tried to tell them you got to be patient. You can't really judge rankings in the summertime. Don't ever worry about quarterback, running back, or wide receiver when Steve Sarkisian's in Austin. You just can't do that. He's always going to have those guys stocked and prepared. And 3 weeks later, they've got a top 5, top 6 class team ranked in the nation for 2025.
Yeah, you're right. July, we saw at the end of July, Texas was sitting at 16 or 17 in the On3 industry rankings. At the end of August, after Jamie French commits, they're sitting at number 6. An incredible run that might not be over. Yeah, the month of August is over. We saw Khalil Lockett. We saw Jonah Williams. We saw Jamie French all commit to Texas. We thought maybe the number 1 athlete in America, Michael Terry, was also going to come off the board in August. He did not. He's going to take his recruitment. Well, we don't really know how far he's going to take it, but at least we know he's going to take it into September, because today is September 1st and Michael Terry's not committed. So what are you hearing right now on Texas and number 1 athlete Michael Terry?
They continue to have great conversations. Texas really, really set the platform for this recruitment in that official visit in June. AJ Milwee, Chris Jackson, Steve Sarkisian, Jeff Banks. I mean, this was a group effort. And they let him know exactly how he can be used. And if you watch the Longhorns on Saturday against Colorado State, the amount of different formations and different rotations with 6 different receivers, 5 different running backs, listen, that's a big, big deal. And Michael Terry sees that. That is something, you know, he needs the ball in his hands. I think Joe Cook, our guy at Inside Texas, went to go see him about a week and a half ago, and you just got to put the ball in his hands. There's so many ways he can beat you across the field. I see an LJ Humphrey type of athlete in Michael Terry, and he loves Texas. Oregon still pushing hard. Nebraska is trying to get him on campus for a game in the next few weeks. Matt Rule and those guys are not going to let up. And with Dylan Raiola in Lincoln, that's a pretty good little sell. But right now that Texas has 2 5-star receivers, I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Terry turns into that third potentially receiver, just from a optic standpoint in this class, because I think that's where he can do a lot of damage. H-back, tight end, flex, just get him on the field. I still think there's a decision coming in the next few weeks. I don't think this thing is going to stretch into October. I would be shocked if it did. I think you might see Terry back on campus at Texas in the next few weeks for a game potentially. But right now, I still like the Horns. I think they're leading the way. You just got to watch Oregon and Nebraska. They are making some strong pushes.
Yeah, we're tracking Michael Terry as of right now. I think he's expected to be in Lincoln for that Colorado game. We'll report on that throughout the week, but we'll keep an eye on that.
Right.
Another thing that I'm keeping an eye on was top 100 Texas linebacker commit Elijah Barnes. He visited Oregon over the weekend. Justin, what's up with that?
Yeah, well, in the recruiting world, there's always little surprises here and there, and that was a little bit of a surprise that Elijah Bo Barnes, look, his game film from Friday is some of the best you're going to see this year already. Like it was one of the best performances a linebacker can have. Top to bottom, you saw a fantastic player. And what did Rashad Samples do? Called him immediately to tell him that Texas is going to, waste him, that he's not going to be used properly at Texas. They're not taking it. They're taking advantage of him. They're not. It's all anti-Texas. It's not pro-Oregon, and that's some kids are going to see that and they're going to drink that. And they're going to think that's what tastes good, and then some kids will see through that. It remains to be seen how Elijah Barnes and his family is going to handle this. Taking those visits and not letting the staff know is kind of a bad beat. Yeah. I don't think there's a whole lot to see here right now, but it's something that we're certainly monitoring. It's something we reported on yesterday. Charlie Williams had a good little note on that one as well. But man, it wouldn't be recruiting. Texas has had so much good momentum and mojo in the last 9-10 days. It just wouldn't be recruiting without a balance of, well, now you got so-and-so taking a visit to so-and-so. I think one thing that you can look at, though, is Oregon, they had kind of a hard time with Idaho at home. They barely beat them. And maybe something like that on the field may have an effect or two. I don't know. But just it's recruiting. Barnes is I don't think he's opening up his recruitment at all. I think in the NIL era, you're going to see kids push the limits in some spots just to kind of see if they can increase an offer, if they can increase their package that they get from an NIL standpoint. Yeah. It's just part of recruiting in 2024, Josh. And but right now, I don't think there's anything to see there. I wouldn't be surprised if Barnes is back in Austin in the next few weeks. But it's something we're definitely having to pay attention to.
Yeah, we'll pay attention to it. Okay, so this was like an appetizer. I know there was a lot of great players on campus over the weekend, but this is just week one. So what game or games should Texas fans have circled for the big visit weekends where they get those mass amounts of recruits on campus for a visit? What week?
Oh, yeah, that's Texas, Georgia. I think it's October 19th. That's the weekend. Texas has already identified that weekend as they're going to bring in everybody.
Everyone.
There are already guys that are going to get that are coming in, setting up plane reservations, things of that sort, finding hotels. Because look, that's going to be the weekend. Texas is going to blow it out when the Georgia Bulldogs come to Texas on October 19th. That is, I can't wait because it's not only going to be a great game, a great atmosphere from two of the top teams in the country. You're going to have, I bet that recruiting list is 50, 60 deep of some of the best talent in 2025, 2026, and 2027 in the nation. They're going to blow it out for Georgia and Kirby Smart. They did that 2 years ago when Nick Saban in Alabama came to Texas, and that actually benefited them tremendously. There were a ton of recruits that were in the stands that day that wound up signing with Texas. One notably is Kobe Black, a freshman that's got on the field yesterday for the Horns. Right. And so they're going to blow it out against Georgia, and they're going to do it big. It is such a stinker that they have to play them right after Oklahoma because of the emotional and physical toll that game takes. But when you know you're going to be hosting some of the best in the absolute nation on a week in the next weekend, I think Texas staff's going to be up to it.
Yeah, they'll be up for that one for sure. Texas fans, talk to us. How are we feeling coming out of the weekend? Let us know. And also, Were you one of the ones that was worried about Texas recruiting back in July? Let us know. Comment section. You can be honest. We're in the trust tree here. Just be honest with us. Were you at one point worried about this Texas Longhorn recruiting class? Let us know. Comment section below. The Dogs absolutely dismantled Clemson in Atlanta to open the season. Another season opener in Atlanta, another dominating performance by the Dogs. And guess what? There was lots of recruits on hand for this one. That's why we're here to talk about it. And we got Rusty Mansell from Dogs HQ. He's going to be here to break it down. But first, UGA fans, jump on board and hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. Number one team needs to be on the number one channel. Go ahead, hit subscribe for me. All right. Bring on the great Rusty Mansell. And before we get into Saturday, Rusty, you just put a note up on Dogs HQ. You guys can go there, read it right now. That the dead period ended, and now September 1st, it's Sunday. UGA has visitors on campus today.
Remember that saying that Kirby used in Nashville at the SEC Media Days 2 years ago, better never rest? Well, that's kind of the saying. You got a big win against Clemson on Saturday. You got a long weekend, kind of let's just chill, get ready for this game. Nope, right. They had two of their top 2026 targets on campus today, out-of-state kids. I'll go ahead and give you the name because we put it on Dogs HQ first thing this morning. Got Lincoln Keys, 6'6", tight end out of Michigan. This is a young man they had on campus this summer. He got a chance to work out. He's only a 3-star right now, but I traded some texts with Charles Power. He knows to look at him, and he's going to evaluate him as he goes. I think he is a outstanding prospect. I think he runs better than a lot of people think. He is legit 6'6". Then you go into California. Oh, by the way, Georgia had a pretty good performance yesterday from a California running back by the name of Nate Frazier. In the 26 class, they have Brian Bonner out of California, 4-star prospect. He's on campus today. The good thing that for Georgia, both of those young men got to sit in that section yesterday as recruits, and now they get to go visit Athens, get to spend some one-on-one time with Todd Hartley, Mike Bobo, all these guys on the offensive staff. They'll get a chance to spend some time. Already saw a social media post by one of their parents. They're in the stadium walking around. So, listen, better never rest, and Georgia wasted no time or no days off getting prospects on campus.
Yeah. You know, Georgia, they're laying the groundwork. That's what Georgia does. They don't become the leader when these guys are seniors. They become the leader early, and this is kind of where you don't hear a lot about it, but this is where the groundwork gets done.
Especially when you build these out-of-state relationships. And in particular, let's talk a little bit about California, if you give me 1 second. Obviously, you got Brock Bowers. You got Ernest Green, your left tackle, who people think is going to be a first-round draft pick. Then you got Nate Frazier. The state of California had Kibble Milton last year. The state of California has been really good to Georgia. They're going to continue to go coast to coast, and they're making a footprint in that state, going in and winning some big battles. This might be another one in the 2026 class. We'll see how this visit goes and kind of where this young man is at running back after this visit.
Hey, they got to. Alabama's been tapping California,
for years.
Why not Georgia, right?
No doubt about it.
All right, so let's take it back to Saturday. What was it like being down? I know, hey, there's levels to atmospheres, right? We're not in Athens. We know what's going to happen in Athens. We got the whole season to have great visit weekends and great atmospheres there. But what was it like for recruits to be in Atlanta for that season opener for Georgia Clemson?
I think Georgia spoke for itself. We talked about this on Inside Scoop last week. As a neutral site game, you can't physically visit with them. You can't have them on the sideline before the game. You can't visit with their parents after the game. So the best thing that Georgia can do is have those recruits watch and say, this is how we're going to use you. You watch this today. And I think that atmosphere, I've been in that Mercedes-Benz building a long time, Josh, many games. It's one of the best facilities in the world. When that thing is rocking, man, it is loud. I've been in there when Alabama's been rocking. I've been in there when Georgia's been rocking. I mean, that place is really go. And I guarantee you yesterday, we got some recruit reaction up. You go to Dogs HQ, Jeremy Johnson, Steve Wiltfong, Jake Roos. All of us have got some reaction. I think the one thing that stood out, I'll say this, kind of the common theme among these recruits was, wow, how many freshmen Georgia played yesterday. And don't think for 1 minute, when they were riding those buses back to Athens yesterday, those coaches weren't texting going, you know what? I told you we're going to play some young guys. So Georgia gets negative recruited a lot. This is one of the things. If you go there, you're going to have to sit. You're not going to play. I guarantee you yesterday, they were in those DMs going, we told you we played the best here, and you're going to get a chance to play early if you're that guy.
All right, one name of a prospect that was not there is Usman Chroma. This was a real intriguing name heading in because he's one of the best running backs in the state of Georgia. At certain points of this recruitment, it felt like the Dogs were heavily involved. It felt like Florida State led. It feels like now that Auburn leads. He ends up showing up at Auburn this weekend. He was not in Atlanta. What does this mean for Usman Kroma in Georgia? Do you think we'll see him back in Athens soon?
Well, they got a game this week against Tennessee Tech, and that's 2:00. And no offense to them, that's not going to be a game a lot of recruits are going to travel 4 or 5 hours to get to. So they don't have a home game until October the 5th against Auburn. Then they have Mississippi State. So, you kind of look at that. Steve Wilfong and Chad Simmons, two of the best in the business, period. There's a lot of momentum with Auburn right now as we filmed this. He was on campus yesterday. So, if he were to commit to Auburn anytime soon, I know both of those made a prediction for on 3 for Auburn. So it tells you there's a lot of smoke behind the scenes that Auburn's made a big move here. I'll say this in confidence. If he does commit to Auburn, verbally commit, Georgia's not going to give up on him. They're going to continue to recruit him. They're going to continue to say, look at Nate Frazier, look at our freshman running back. This is a guy we plan early. You can do this as well. So we'll see how things go, but sounds like the Tigers got a lot of momentum with him right now.
All right, another guy we got to hit on is Chase Linton. He came off that Rutgers decommitment. He made that official on August 17th. So he was at the Georgia-Clemson game. How big of a priority is he now that he's back on the market, and who else is involved in this recruitment?
Listen, I would be shocked if he's not in a Georgia commit list before this one's over with. I mean, this is a guy they have targeted. This is a guy they worked out, and I will tell you, he's done it for me. Was I blown away the first time I ever saw him? Not really. He kept getting better. He kept getting bigger. And then the more I found out about him, I was like, wait a minute, this guy's got a chance. And by the time that spring rolled around, he was kind of that guy. He goes to Georgia, I think, on May 31st, their huge camp, has a really good performance. He's a lot longer in person than Georgia thought. They kind of kept him like, wait a minute, this guy's got to be on our board. As things unfolded this summer, he became more of a priority. And then the last weekend of July, they kind of got him up there and from what I understand, worked him out again, and they offered him. And listen, Josh, I don't know who else is involved because this is a very quiet young man. He's handled this thing, I think, really well behind the scenes, and he and his mother. And I say this, I will be surprised if he doesn't end up a Georgia Bulldog at some point. He's going to be back on camp. He might be back on campus this weekend. That'll be one to watch. He's going to take an official. So my guess would be either Auburn or Mississippi State. I think this one's over with by the end of October. Just my guess. I'll be surprised if he's not a Georgia Bulldog. They love him. 6'4", like an 81-inch wingspan, crazy length on him. In-state kid, high academic, checks boxes for this Georgia Bulldog staff.
All right. Well, how about another prospect that I could see Georgia maybe doubling back on? I'm talking FSU defensive line commitment, Kevin Wynn. He's from Greensboro, Georgia.
Big Georgia town.
And Florida State came in, and maybe when Kevin Wynn's stock wasn't so high, they went in and they landed a commitment. He's now the number 8 ranked defensive lineman in America. And he quietly was attending this game. I know it hasn't made many major headlines, but it seems like he's a priority flip target for Georgia, and they got him to campus that first game. Is it significant?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they haven't given up on him at all. I don't use the word double back. I don't think Georgia ever quit on him. Even though he verbally committed, I talk about the KJ Bolden because he was very open. He said, man, I committed to Florida State. He said the next morning I was on the phone with Kirby Smart. Kevin Wynn is from a massive Georgia town in Greensboro, Georgia, right there on the lake. Nice area. There's a ton of Georgia fans there. I can assure you there's so many people in his ear. Kudos to him and kudos to Florida State right now for having him. And can they hold on to it? We'll see how this thing goes. But Georgia's not giving up on Kevin Wynn. He's a priority in-state defensive lineman. There's only so many of these body types to go around. So you know why Florida State, Georgia, everybody was on him, Alabama as well. So listen, this is one of those things I say, you don't get these kind of easy. Georgia's going to continue to recruit him. Florida State's done a good job. We'll see if they get him back on campus. Georgia, in my opinion, will have him on campus a couple of times this fall. We'll see how this thing unfolds. But he is definitely a continued priority for Georgia staff and Georgia defensive line coach Trey Scott.
All right, so Georgia fans, they're watching this. They're enjoying the big win over Clemson. It's always fun to go beat Clemson at a neutral site stadium and all that, but the real fun to be had is in Athens. We all know that. Home opener this weekend. Should we expect a big visit list, or when can fans expect that big visit weekend in Athens?
In my experience for a game like this, you're going to see a lot of the younger prospects, a lot of kids that are probably freshmen and sophomores making their first kind of, quote, big-time visits to a school. It's Tennessee Tech. It's a 2:00 start. It's going to be a little crispy at 2:00, Josh. And They'll have enough. They'll probably have a lot of their verbal commits there, but I can tell you this: they play at Kentucky, then they have a bye week, then they play at Alabama. So it's going to be a while before they get back in Athens, but they have back-to-back home games of Auburn and Mississippi State on October the 5th and October 12th, and I can guarantee you're going to have me on Inside Scoop. I'm going to be on previewing it, and I'm going to be on doing a follow-up, and I love that with you, but I don't expect this to be a huge list. They'll probably have one or two guys that's still enough travel time. So we'll have you covered on Dogs HQ. But as you move forward in the season, that back-to-back Auburn and Mississippi State weekends, I think Georgia's going to try to host a lot of people because don't forget now, and Kirby Smart to tell you, they lose a home game going to Jacksonville. So those games become even more priority. I'll tell you this, as you look down the list, you could imagine a late November game with Tennessee and Knoxville, most likely probably a night game. That's going to be a very, very who's who kind of list as well.
Absolutely. Can't wait for that one. But this weekend, hey, great start. Dog fans, talk to us.
Hey, let me give you one more. Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin both made it, confirmed. Are they going to talk? Probably not. But what does it say for Georgia? Continue. And what does our old buddy Barton Simmons used to say, Josh? Follow the business.
All right, dog fans, talk to us. What does it mean to you guys, this first win and all this recruiting intel? Talk to me in Rusty, comment section below. Dogs HQ, it's jumping. Rusty, thanks for stopping by the Inside Scoop today.
Appreciate you, Josh.
Let's talk some Ole Miss recruiting coming off a huge win, 76-0, offensive explosion. And guess who was watching? Some big-time recruits, especially five-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham. And I got Zach Berry on this video from OM Spirit. We're going to get into all the latest recruiting intel coming out of Oxford. But, guys, before we get going, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel, the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right, let's bring in Zach Berry. 76 points, had to look really good to five-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham. What are you hearing about him coming out of this one?
Yeah, he was the guy to talk about, the guy to keep an ear to the ground about. He was there all day. I talked to a couple people in Oxford. They said that he stayed for pretty much the entire game, which I was honestly surprised. It was well in hand early in the second quarter. I believe it was 52-0 at halftime. Yeah, I thought for sure a teenager would want to leave and go find somewhere to hang out with some friends and party. He stayed. And the student section rewarded him. There was a "We Want Caleb" chant. He went over to the student section, hung out with some of the students. But, yeah, I mean, he had a great time. He's doing a lot of prep for his game this week, so I'll talk to him some point later today. But all returns from people in Oxford and the staff, they said that he had a great time, and you have to think he loved seeing the offense.
Yeah, and to me, this recruitment with Caleb Cunningham, it's kind of one of these situations. Now, tell me if I'm wrong. It's kind of one of these situations where Ole Miss is just going to have to keep chopping wood, keep getting them on campus. None of these visits mean anything in singular, when you look at it just at one visit. But when you take a step back, I think when we get to December and you say, oh, wow, Caleb Cunningham's been to 4 games at Ole Miss this season, and then I think at the end is where they have their shot to flip him. Is that how you read his recruitment?
I think so. Throughout this whole process, when I talked to Chad, our own Chad Simmons, when I talked to Steve Wiltfong, I mean, everybody says the same thing. And then other coaches around Mississippi and other people in the industry, they're like, man, the kid is honest. He's a straight shooter. Mm-hmm. He will tell you what he's thinking. He's not going to say something just, so you want to hear it, or the fans want to hear it. No, he's going to be straight. And when I talked to him in July, he said, I really like Ole Miss and I really like Alabama. I could see myself at either one of those places, and I think I could be successful and get to the NFL. So I think that right now it's those two schools, and I think he's going to hear him out. I know he's going to be in Tuscaloosa, I think, twice this month. Mm-hmm. I expect him to be back at Ole Miss for one of or all of Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Georgia. And he's going to make a decision on signing day, And that's not I don't want people to take that as, it's a toss-up. It's 50-50. No, he's very clear about Alabama and his affinity for that program and Kalen DeBoer. He's still committed, but like kids do now, where you got to keep your options open because you never know what's going to happen with coaching changes, with whatever. He's not going to close the door. And Lane Kiffin and them they've got something holding that door open. I mean, they got a foot there. They've got a door stopper. I mean, they're trying to do whatever they can. Josh, I had someone ask me, do you think Kiffin threw the ball as much because Caleb was there? I don't think so, but it certainly doesn't hurt
Right.
that you have 529 passing yards. I think it was the first SEC team to have 70-plus point outputs in consecutive openers. Most points in a game in the AP poll era for Ole Miss. So it couldn't have gone any better. I know recruits don't really look at wins and losses a lot, but I think the proof of concept is big for Caleb Cunningham for looking at Alabama and Ole Miss and kind of how he fits.
Now, the next prospect we're going to talk about, I think it's in a little different situation than Caleb Cunningham. Ladarian Clarity, he's a DB out of Pensacola, Florida, 4-star DB. He was going to make his decision at the end of summer. He pushed that back to September 21. Ladarian Clarity now, it seems like a different situation. It seems like with Clarity, Ole Miss just needs to close here, right? They're the team to beat heading into the September 21 decision date.
I think so. Every time I talk to Ladarian, he has nothing but good things to say about Ole Miss. He lights up when he talks about the program. I think it was big for him on the official visit. His parents and his brother came with him. They loved everything about the atmosphere, the tight-knit staff, the family vibes. I think that was big for them. They said it was hands down the best OB that they had been on.
Yeah.
And I think that's big for Ladarian, the family atmosphere and everybody being really close. I think that's big for him. And he moved it back. I think it's twofold. I think he wants to take more visits, just, kind of one more time. I know he'll probably go to Florida State, probably go to Washington. He's going to do these last couple visits to just, dot all the I's and cross the T's. But I do think Ole Miss is the favorite. And I expect, as of right now, I think Ole Miss will eventually get him in 20 days when he announces.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, one more prospect we got to hit on. Number one offensive tackle from the 2026 class, 5-star Jackson Cantwell. He visited this weekend. Big-time priority for the Ole Miss staff?
Absolutely. 5-star, of course. But he's got some really good relationships already with people on staff. And look, it's going to be tough because everybody wants the 5-star, and he's going to see everybody. He's going to, Nebraska, Missouri, all of the big programs, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Oregons, all of those. But he's very open to Ole Miss. When I talked to him earlier this summer, he said that he could sense some momentum shifting around the program, and he expects some big things. So I think that's big for him, is to, a guy of his caliber. It's not anything, negative towards Ole Miss or anything like that. But, he's a big time name, and he's going to have big time offers, and people are going to come after him. But, he said when I talked to him today, he was like, man, I think the score kind of spoke for itself. And, he likes the way the offensive line looked. They dominated. So I think Ole Miss, again, going back to wins and losses, I don't think recruits care about that too much. But, again, the proof of concept, like Ole Miss, like you're a college football playoff caliber team. Now can it get there? And I think somebody like Jackson Cantwell will pay more and more attention to Ole Miss the more it wins and the more, that snowball effect of momentum. I think that's huge for Ole Miss this fall for recruits like him.
It was a great time to get him on campus, though. There's no doubt about that. Let's talk about Mason Dunn. He is a cornerback, a real nice-looking cornerback, 6'2.5", 180 pounds, out of the state of Mississippi, and he committed in early May. The reason I bring his name up now is because he got offered by Alabama yesterday. Any reason for concern there?
It's early. I would say probably not, but it's Alabama, and that's a big name for kids in Mississippi. Yeah, and I talked to his coach earlier. He hadn't spoken to Mason since he received the offer. Mason's not a big talker. He keeps to himself. He's pretty quiet, but I think Ole Miss is going to be fine here just because of that. We saw it earlier, at the end of August with Chicago Mills Night. Ole Miss was first in line there. They found him. They offered him first. That connection with the staff paid off when everybody else came calling. Pete Golding and the rest of that defensive staff, Brian Brown, Wes Neighbors, they got in on Mason Dunn early. And like you said, I mean, he's the guy you want to get off the bus first. If you're going to make a cornerback in a lab, he's kind of what you want, right? He's long, he's big, he can run. I think right now it's a little early because he just got the offer, But I like Ole Miss's chances. He's really close. He's right down the road in Tupelo, and I think Pete Golding is going to do what he can to keep a hold of him.
All right. Now, we know this was a big visit weekend, but relatively speaking, there's going to be much bigger weekends in Oxford. So when can Ole Miss fans expect that mega recruiting weekend?
I think in terms of when the next one is, it'll be Kentucky, that SEC opener. Mm-hmm. I think that'll be a big one.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Oklahoma game and the Georgia. I mean, November 9th, there might be a Costco size, a Costco receipt size list for the visitors for Georgia November 9th. That'll be a crazy one. But I think it's Kentucky. That'll be when you'll see another big group of 25s and 26s. They're starting to push more for 26s to get in and see the game live. So, yeah, Kentucky's going to be the next big one.
All right, Ole Miss fans, let us know. Great start to the season. Caleb Cunningham on campus. How we feeling? Let us know. Talk to us. Comment section below. Well, you've made it to the end of today's video, but there's hundreds more videos on the On3 Recruits channel for you to check out. And also, while you're here, hit subscribe.